probably heard this phrase before, but we often hear, oh, we learn from experience, which that's not really true. We learn from evaluated experience, right? If you never truly sit down and look back and say, man, what did I learn? What went wrong? Then you're not really going to learn from experience. You're going to just make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And so we actually build into our rhythm here an evaluation or kind of a review portion. So I'll show you Easter here for an example. So first week of January, we get a certain team into the room, and this can be volunteers, it can be staff members, it can be a mixture. We've done both. We have a mixture of volunteers come in and some staff members, and for us it's less about titles and even more about how they think. Who are the dreamers in this? The dreamers in the church and on your team. Think about those people and pull them into the room, and that's what we do. We do an Easter ideation there, and then we kind of walk away with some ideas, and there's a process for that we do. And then we go into investigation mode. And about once a month, we pull teams together, and then it gets a little closer, and we start to do it weekly, and then we get into Easter implementation. So that's kind of a short example of that. But if you notice here, we had Vision Sunday, and the week right after, we did Vision Sunday Retro, or our evaluation. So we did that for Easter. The Tuesday after Easter, our team had off, and then 2 o'clock we said, all right, everyone. We kind of made it fun. We had some food, and I had a couple of tools that the team did to evaluate that I'm going to show you here today. And we just evaluated. The kids went over there. The inside the auditorium went over there. The lobby and outside the auditorium went over there, and we just evaluated. So, any questions so far?
On that one, is it built into your weekly rhythm, or is this something that you add in that's like a monthly strategic based on the rhythms you have?
Which, like these
spring key weekend planning.
Yeah, so those right there are our they're right there. So that's what we use these for.
Okay.
So basically whatever portion we're on, or whatever key weekend we're on, we just plug them into those holes right there.
So you build that into your weekly rhythm?
Because also what was happening was Jen, who kind of schedules all those, would schedule like an all teams Easter meeting, and then that happened during the E-Kids meeting. And then it was like, well, which one do I go to, right? So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any other questions so far? No? Okay. Another thing that we've done is, again, training and launch planning. When is the best time to launch something? But also, when's the best time to train people? And it's not really the best time to train people, small group leaders, right after they launch their small group, right? And I know you guys know that, but also, when are they going to be available? Not just time-wise, but energy-wise. Is it really the best time to train them?
Right.
When they're going to 18 Christmas parties, for work and church and school and all these things. And so really being strategic about the people that you truly want to disciple and develop. And so, but also launching and saying, how can we launch off of in a strong way? And so, for example, for us, fall time, we have a fall launch. And for us, we have church 52 weeks out of the year, but we say if we're gonna really, promote something or really push something big, like getting into a connector, when is the best Sunday to do that? And for us, it's the Sunday after Labor Day. And so that's kind of an example for launch seasons. But here's an example of how we've kind of used our seasons to determine when do we train leaders. And so here you can see second week of January, Connect Group Leader Training, and we've kind of done a collaborative training with all our ministries, Alpha training. We launch our Wednesday night youth here, but we launch our kids here because we realize that when parents launch with their kids, it's much more effective than youth can be a little bit more separate in a sense. And so again, this is just for us, but just for you guys to have an example of, we don't just apply the same principle to every area, but we truly look at each area and say, okay, what is the best rhythm and launch time for each one of these. So again, here's some examples for you guys. The last one is intentional growth planning. So you might think, well, didn't we just talk about like planning for growth? And so again, this one is a lot different than all the other things I talked about. Again, we have to plan for Sunday, right? What's the sermon gonna be? What's the worship songs? Who's serving? All those things. But then we're also, if you guys like to do planning for key weekends, oh, we got this outreach happening, we got to plan for that, plan for this. But then also there's just things that we don't ever work on the ministry because we're always working in the ministry, right? And so for us, we've built into our rhythms times where we're going to actually just set aside the weekly whirlwind and we're just going to work on the ministry. We're going to work on that stinking kids check-in system because it's broken every week and I never take time to truly fix it and figure out how do we do this more effectively, right? And so I want to talk to you guys about intentional growth planning, and a lot of what I'm about to share with you comes from this great resource and system called Church OS. And here's a book called Intentional Churches. And it's just really an operating system. So we all have our own operating systems, whether we know it or not, right? Just like an iPhone has an operating system. And if you have an iPhone, you know how to use it. If you don't have an iPhone, it's confusing to you. And every church has an operating system, whether you've established it and written it down on a piece of paper, like here's how we plan, here's the language that we use, here's how we go about creating vision. Like we all have our own way of operating, and for us, we said we're going to be intentional about what our operating system looks like. And we're actually going to all agree to use the same language, to use the same operating system. In fact, if there's a new staff member that comes on board, part of their whole training and onboarding is to get trained in on some of the operating system stuff so that when I say, hey, we're going to do a 4 helpfuls, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Does that make sense? And so for us, intentional growth planning is one of those things. It's part of our operating system where we say, hey, we're going to do an IGP. And so what is an intentional growth plan? An intentional growth plan is a 2 to 4 hour meeting. I mean, honestly, it can be a day to 2 day meeting. It's having a team of at least 5 to 6 people, and it can be paid or volunteer. Again, we've had both. We've had a mixture of volunteers and staff people in the room. And then really what you're doing is you're looking at this question of what steps can we take in the next 120 days to get us closer to our vision. And so what we used to do as a team is we used to actually look a year out in advance and say, okay, what are we going to do between now and next May 1st? And let's kind of scope it out and let's plan it out and let's do all these things. And we realized by the time we're 6 months into that plan, everything's changed. COVID happened, right? Or we grew or we shrunk or whatever. And it's like, okay, now we got to change our plan. At best, I found that we can somewhat effectively plan and prepare for the next 120 days when we're trying to take a step towards our vision. Does that make sense? And so really you're asking the questions during this time, what do we need to start doing? What do we need to stop doing? What do we need to keep doing better? Sometimes it's not always about being critical on yourself. Sometimes it's like, what's really working well? And if we just put more time and attention on that thing, it's going to take care of a lot of other things. Yeah. What do we need to keep doing but doing it better? And then what roadblocks do we need to remove? And so that's really what intentional growth planning is effective for. And I give this whole spiel. So basically, we get a team in the room. We have charts like this up around the room. They're not usually falling down. And you have a facilitator up there, and you can do that. But essentially, you're kind of just walking through a set of tools that are really just conversation starters. And I'm going to talk about this in a short bit, but intentional growth planning, it's this idea of saying, hey, here's where we are today. We are living in the battle. we're planning for Sunday. We're having to, get stuck in the whirlwind. But we're going to take a moment and we're going to hover above the battlefield. Just for 2 hours, for 4 hours. We're just going to hover above it. We're not going to worry about it. We're not going to think about it. And we're going to look to what our future vision is. And we're going to say, okay, we know this is our vision. So part of this is assuming that you have kind of a clear vision laid out. There are some tools that you can use to create a vision if you don't have that, and really identify what is our true vision. I'm going to try not to take too many rabbit holes, but for us, vision is not this nice, feel-good saying. Vision is tangible, it's measurable, and it has a due date on it. In the next 3 years, we want 50% of our church to be in a connector. Like, that is a vision that you can sell people and get people on board with. Vision is not, man, we want every person to be discipled. Well, that's great. Like, so does Jesus, so do I. But like, what are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to get to? And so it's a moment where you get the vision up in front of the team and say, okay guys, here's the vision, right? And it can be the vision at any level. It can be the church-wide vision. It can be the vision for your kids' ministry. Here's our vision for kids. And then you're saying, okay, what are the hills that are standing in front of us? What are the difficulties, the roadblocks that we're going to have to take a large amount of energy, because again, we're putting energy towards our week to week. We're putting energy towards Easter. And so we're actually asking to use extra energy out of ourselves to get towards this vision, because we're hoping to do something that we're not currently doing right now. And so we're going to need extra energy to take the hill here, but also there's this great chasm to cross. There's some big cliffs that we need to build a bridge across. And so what bridges do we need to build? And so an intentional growth plan, what the 2 hours looks like is you take the first, actually this is one of the, most of your time is spent here. It's in the discover phase. This is the evaluating phase. And so it's a time where you say, okay, let's just look at everything that we're doing. We're not going to be attached to any of it, and we're just going to discover where are we today. Because if we want to honestly dream about tomorrow, we have to be honest about ourselves today. And a lot of times we're not willing to be honest about ourselves today. Yeah. And so you ask the question, if this is true about tomorrow, then what must be true today? And then after you spend some time here, you say, okay, we talked through everything that was right, wrong, missing, confused. Now let's organize all of that into some ideas. And let's begin to design, and let's begin to maybe dream a little bit. And then you begin to organize those dreams, and you begin condense it down, and then you begin to activate it. And this is the next 120 days right here. And you build it into the rhythm of your church. Does that make sense? A little bit. Yeah. So this is kind of an overview of what intentional growth plan is. So what we do in an intentional growth plan, like I already said, we review the vision. Our goal is at the end to have 3 goals that we walk away with, 3 tangible goals. And then lastly, we make an immediate action plan. Have you guys ever been to like a meeting like this, and you come up with 3 goals, and then 2 weeks go by and you're like, oh man, remember those goals we wrote on that piece of paper? That was really cool. So we actually make it mandatory for us to lead with an immediate action plan, which I'll show you here in a short bit. I just want to show you this, and I actually go through this every time with our team as a reminder. But these are just things that I hope resonate with you. But for us, why intentional growth planning has become so important is really a lot of these principles and ground rules that I think apply within this. First off, it's team-based planning. And yes, there is a lead pastor of the church, and our lead pastor is the one that truly is responsible for the vision of this congregation and has been called to lead this congregation. But I also don't want to put the pressure on him that for every decision that needs to be made, that he has to have this mountaintop Moses experience to hear from the Lord and come down and say, all right, guys, here's the plan, go do it, right? That's a lot of pressure as a lead pastor. He doesn't have eyes and ears everywhere. He doesn't know how the eKids check-in system truly goes and functions. And so this really says we're going to commit ourselves to team-based planning. Our lead pastor, he has loved this. Yes, he's in the room, and if there's something going the wrong direction in a conversation, he is the first to say, hey, no, that doesn't really resonate with what I feel like God's speaking in my heart. But he also allows everyone to speak into where we are going and the decisions that need to be made. Secondly, we're saying, God, this is not about my personal agenda, but it's about your will, and it's for your glory. And so when we get in this room for the next 2 to 4 hours, it's not about what I want, God, but it's what you want. It's about furthering your kingdom. The next thing that I say is that everyone needs to participate in the room, because everyone has a different perspective. Everyone has a different way of thinking of things. Everyone works in a different area of the church or on the team, and so everyone's voice matters. And then I say, trust the journey. It might feel clunky in the beginning, the first hour. You're like, where is this conversation going? I feel like we're in the weeds, but I say, just trust the journey. We're going to get there to the end. And then this is a huge one. There are no silver bullets.
Oh, man.
There are no silver bullets. And we fall into the silver bullet mentality so often. Again, a silver bullet is, would be you guys saying, oh, I'm going to take their exact meeting structure and apply it to ours. Yeah. What I hope you caught is the principle behind it, right? Yeah. And so, no silver bullets. And we could spend a whole session talking about what a silver bullet mentality looks like. The last huge thing that has helped us or hindered us by not doing it is the last 10% rule. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we're willing to share 90%, where it's like, I don't know, I just feel like there's some things that aren't working well, and, the kids area that I think if we shore them up, well, what areas? Oh, I don't know, just, with the younger age. Okay, well, they're all young. Well, or the younger, just tell me what's not going on, right? Don't beat around the bush. So we encourage, share the last 10% of truth and don't take things personally.
Yeah, that's good.
When you're sharing the last 10% of truth, don't make it personal. Mm-hmm. But also, if someone's sharing about your area, don't take things personal. Lastly, gold is in the conversation. I always say in a meeting like that, don't cut people off. In fact, active listen. If someone's sharing, some people are verbal processors and they're talking out loud, and don't cut people off. Gold is in the conversation. These meetings, it's all about mining for the gold, trying to find, again, what are the things that are keeping us from getting to our vision. And then second, I say focus, turn your phones off, no texting, no emailing, and lastly, we have fun. So, what we do also is we say, hey, we're about to assess different areas of our ministry, and we all have different standards, right? Some people think this is what true north, or this is what it looks like to be right, and some people think this is what it looks like to be right. And so we actually go through, what are the poor evaluation standards when it comes to if something is actually working or not working. So a poor evaluation standard, first one is a personal preference. I just really love 45-minute worship sessions. I love 45-minute worship sessions. But for what we're trying to do on a Sunday morning, is that best for what we want or what we need, right? And so again, you're trying to get away from what you like, what you want. Secondly, past success. Well, man, back in the day, our Wednesday night kids program, that was really working. And we had this bus ministry going on, and kids were coming, and it was really working. Well, what used to work then may not work now, right? And so you can't just default to the past success. Another one is getting better. Man, at least we're getting better. This week we only lost 3 kids. Last week it was 5 kids. At least we're getting better, right? Give ourselves a pat on the back. So the next one is comparison. Well, if you see the church down the road, at least we're not like them. Or I heard one time, this ministry did this, at least our ministry. I don't care what that ministry. God has called you. He's anointed you to lead and to steward the ministry that He's put you over. Yeah. And so for us as a church, we're saying we don't care how great or how not great those people over there might be doing. We got the blinders on like the horse, right? We're saying, God, we are passionate about what you've called us to do. And that's what we're going to commit to. It's God, the mandate you put in front of us. The next thing is anecdotal evidence. You guys, this one is huge. Have you ever been in a conversation in the hallway where someone stops you and they said, oh, this thing happened, you should probably fix that. Right. And you're like, oh man, Miss Martha said this thing was broke, so we got to go fix it. And then you go change that thing. And then someone's like, oh, that actually was working really great. So then you go back and fix it. And you guys, if we led our church by anecdotal evidence, by this one story, this one piece of feedback over here, man, we'd be changing our services every single week. This week the sound would be up here. The next week the sound would be down here. We'd have acoustic drums this week, not acoustic drums that week. And so we've said we cannot allow anecdotal evidence to dictate what's right, what's wrong, what's missing, what's confused. And then the last thing is the God card. And again, I'm not talking about being led by the Spirit, but I'm saying I'm not going to use the God card to try to defend what really is my personal preference.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's really good.
Because I don't know, like, the Lord's spoken to my heart, but He's never really gotten that detailed to the fact of how I should set up my e-kids check-in system. Right. But the truth is, I spent a lot of time setting up this check-in system, and you're telling me it's not working right? Yeah. And so, be very careful to use the God card. Because that shuts down the conversation very quickly. Yeah. For us, what is our true north? And actually, these are things that they laid out, and we just decided not to come up with anything different because I think it's so true. So when we're looking at what we're doing, we're not comparing it to all those other evaluation standards. We're comparing it to these three things. Is what we are doing reaching the one? Because Jesus came to seek and to save that which is lost, right? That was His primary purpose for coming to the earth. And that is what our mandate is, to reach the lost, to reach the one. So is what we are doing, looking at this check-in system, sorry, that's the example I'm landing on. Looking at this check-in system, is that helping us to reach the one? The person who's never been to church, is it confusing for them to check in their child? If it is, then it's broken. If it's frightening for them, if it's not comfortable for them, then it's broken. Is what we are doing making more and better disciples? It's not just making more disciples. It's not just baptizing a bunch of people, but it's also the people getting baptized are growing in their faith. Yeah. They're learning more about the Lord. And are we making more and better disciples? Are we just gathering a bunch of people? And then lastly, are we doubling the kingdom impact? This is really the parable of the talent. That's good. God has not called us to plateau. He's not called us to stagnate. He said, here's what I've placed in your hand, and He's given everyone a different amount of talents, right? A different amount to steward, but what He's given you, He said, I'm expecting that you're going to grow this, because that is the principle of the kingdom of God, is growth. And it's not that you always live in perpetual growth. There's seasons of growth, and there's seasons of deepening our roots. But in a 3-year span, we say in a 3 to 5 year span, we should see growth. If not, then we need to truly evaluate, is what we are doing working right? That's good. So, I want to take you through a few of these tools. Any questions so far?
Who's the author of that book that you?
This is Doug Parks and Bart Rendell. So, first off, I want to just quick give you a little taste of what an intentional growth plan looks like, feels like. Just to give you an idea, and actually these are some tools that you guys can actually go home tomorrow and start using. And so first off, the discover phase is a time of just really, truly evaluating where you're at today, being truthful and honest about today. And so, one of the main tools that we use for this is called the 4 helpfuls. And so, I don't know if you can see over here, it's really just drawing out 4 quadrants. And you can use a big blank sheet like this, however you want to do it, and asking these 4 questions. What is right? What is wrong? What is missing? What is confused? What is right? That if we pour gasoline on it and amplify it, like, it's going to take care of other issues. What's wrong? That we just need to fix this. What's missing? That, man, I didn't realize that, we didn't have this thing. If we started to do this, it would actually fix some issues. And then lastly, what's confusing? That just needs clarity in it. And so, with this one, we use it at a high level when we're looking at the church as a whole. Saying, all right, what's right, wrong, missing, confused? Well, that is a loaded question. Where do you start? I don't know, just start. And so we just start. You can use it at a lower level, at a ministry level. Like, all right, let's look at kids. What's right, what's wrong, what's missing, confused? We even use it every single Sunday. Right after our service, about 30 to 40 minutes after, we gather a small team into a room. And we say, okay, looking at today, what was right, what was wrong, what was missing, and what was confused. Our kids team gathers together after kids church, and they quick just ask these 4 questions: what's right, what's wrong, what's missing, confused. And so this one's super helpful. And just looking at my time here, what you would do after going through this list is you would have everyone score. We don't do this on a Sunday. This is more during a 2 to 4 hour planning meeting. On a Sunday, it's just like, okay, that was wrong. Paul, you need to go fix that. Or that was confusing. We need to talk about that in our Sunday planning meeting this Sunday, or this Tuesday. All right. I'll get to that one later. So anyways, how you would take this to the next level then is you would say, everyone basically gets up and puts a tally mark by the ones that they think are the biggest hindrances to getting you to your vision. So everyone goes up and scores. This is where the team-based planning comes in, right? Everyone goes up and they score, and they're like, oh, I think this thing that's missing is probably one of our biggest hindrances. And then at the very end, you tally up the marks, and we circle, the top 2, depending on, like you see in there, how long your lists are. We pick the top 2 in each category. We say, all right, those are what we think right now are the biggest things keeping us from taking our next steps towards our vision. Now, the next tool is a really helpful tool as well. It's looking at it from a different perspective. Again, these tools are not magical. They're really just conversation starters. They're really just conversation facilitators. And so this one is more at looking at whether it's ministries within your church, systems within your church, teams within your church, and saying, okay, where is it currently at in its life cycle? Everything has a life cycle. A ministry has a life cycle. It's something that you start. Someday it is going to die. Maybe not today, maybe 50 years from now, but at some point it's not going to exist anymore. And so this one, it's really asking the question, okay, what are all the things that are in the spring right now? Like, we just planted it, we just launched it, we just started it, we just revamped it, and it's currently in the spring and it's starting to grow on. And we don't put like ideas that we intend to do, but things that we've already put money or ideas and meetings and time and money towards. And so we begin to map out all, this thing's in the spring, this in the spring, and then, these things are in the summer. Summer means it's flourishing. I think I have the definitions here. So spring, it's new, it's in the infant stage, energy and resources have already been put towards it. Summer, it's fully built out, don't touch it, don't mess with it, it's working well right now, it's flourishing. What things are in the fall? It's beginning to lose its momentum. It's beginning to kind of decline. You can see that, what used to be working really well is maybe not starting to work as well. And then lastly, what has lost its effectiveness? It's now in the winter, and it either needs a facelift, you just make a few tweaks to it, and it's back in the summer, or you need to completely overhaul this thing, and it goes back into the spring, or it just needs a funeral, and we just need to be done doing it. In fact, probably one of our biggest ones that we've done recently in the last 2 years was our E-Kids Wednesday night. And that was in the winter. Now this place was full of kids, but it was chaotic. We had crying nursery and preschool kids for an hour and a half straight. This room was full of a bunch of elementary kids that weren't learning a thing. It was chaos. And it was like, what is true north? True north is more and better disciples. We are not discipling kids.
Right.
And we realized that, there was a lot of right, wrong, missing, confused within that, but it was in the winter. And so we had to make the decision, are Wednesday nights no longer feasible here? Does it need a funeral? Are there just a few tweaks that we can make to it that really, if we do those things, it'll change it? Or do we need to completely overhaul it? And we landed on the overhaul. And so we overhauled our Wednesday night. We took away the preschool and nursery, which we knew we were going to step on a lot of toes. But for us, honestly, all it was a free daycare. Parents were just dropping off their kids, going shopping, going on dates. People that didn't even go to the church. So it was a cool outreach in a sense, and you could justify it as that, but it wasn't really outreaching people, And then we just realized, man, and I have a preschooler, it's really hard to disciple a preschooler at their bedtime at 7 o'clock when they're hungry.
Yes, amen.
We tried to justify we're discipling those kids. No, you're not. We are burning out team members.
Yeah.
We're utilizing space that maybe we could utilize differently. And so we made that hard decision and we pulled that away, which then affected the groups that we could do here on a Wednesday night, because we had a lot of adults that would drop their kids off and do small groups. So that was another painful decision. Are we willing to make that? And at the end, we went through this whole process of we need to do that. And what we came out with was, this kind of a new way of doing our elementary discipleship transform groups. And really, they spread out across this whole building, and it's all interest-based. So there was a science one, there was an outdoorsy one. I did one with team building. We did all those, ropes course type stuff with second grade boys. And so what we did is we went from discipling 80 to 90 elementary kids on a Wednesday night to 190 elementary kids on a Wednesday night.
Wow.
That were actually being discipled. They had leaders over them.
That's
They were
awesome.
in a group. They were praying together. None of that was happening. I would lead sometimes on a Wednesday night, and I had 30 kids that I'm supposed to read the Bible story to and get prayer requests from. And so that all came out of this process of really saying, are we willing to be truthful about today if we believe that to be true about tomorrow? So that's the ministry life cycle. You score them. And then the one that keeps falling down is your emerging core issues. So there are there's probably 40 different tools like this that they have that I would not share with you just because that would overwhelm you. But to me, these are ones that I think you guys can effectively do on your own. So what we do after this is we say, all right, team, for the next 5-10 minutes, I want you to look at just everything on here. Well, first you score this, kind of similarly, and you say, what are, go up and circle up here which one with the tally mark things you think are most important for us to focus on right now.
So from that for helpful, you take the circle topics into the ministry life cycle?
Nope,
Okay.
It's a completely different conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. So this, if we're looking at kids, it's all right, what are we doing in kids right now? Okay, we have our Wednesday night kids. Where's that at? We have our preschool volunteers. Where do we feel like that team is at? Oh, it's kind of close to winter because not a lot of people like working with 2-year-olds. Where's our nursery team at? You know, and so we kind of map it all like that. Now there might be some similarities from what's on there, but then again, you go up and tally mark and you figure out, okay, which ones do we feel like are the things keeping us from really getting us to our vision, what's most important to focus on right now. And then what you do is you say, okay, what are some emerging core issues? So again, allow for a moment of silence, strategic thinking, taking into context all the things that you've discovered, form some thoughts, some emerging core thoughts. If we do X, then this will happen. Or if we need to X, we need to fix Y. Does that make sense? And so you just begin to write out some sentences like, man, we realize that if we continue to do Wednesday nights the way we're doing them, we're going to burn out volunteers and we're not going to disciple kids the way we want. And so you should begin to write out some emerging core issues that you picked up from here. And I try to get 5 to 6 emerging core issue sentences. And then you get to the fun part, because everyone starts to try to fix over here. Do not allow fixing to happen over here. People are like, oh, that's missing? Well, I had this idea, we should do it. No ideas, don't fix right now, because then the last thing you're going to do is tomorrow's harvest. So tomorrow's harvest is saying, man, what do we want to step into? What do we want to harvest tomorrow? And so it's really beginning to ideate. If we dream big about tomorrow with the reality of today in mind, it can hinder our ability to have big faith. This exercise helps you do both. So first, the first phase is you say, okay, these are emerging core issues. Let's begin to dream. And there's 2 sides to it. So we say, okay, what are brand new ideas, things we're just not even doing that we could think about, that we could start to do to address some of the emerging core issues? Or what are some things that we're doing that if we reinvent it, if we look at it from a different way, that maybe it could change things? And let's just talk about what could we do. Don't necessarily think about budget. Don't think about manpower. Let's just dream together, okay? This is actually the Walt Disney process. They had the dream room, they had the feasibility room, and then I forget what I think it was like the axe room, where it was like they axed almost everything except for 2 or 3 things. So it's kind of that same principle. So first you start off saying, what could we do? And then out of these ideas, as a group, you say, okay, in light of this, what should we do? Like knowing what our goals are, knowing what our vision is, and then at the very end, knowing we're just looking at the next 120 days. We got Easter coming up. You know, some people got vacations, right? We've got, this is our budget. Like, what must we do in the next 120 days in light of the emerging core issues, in light of everything we just talked about? What must we do? And then, I didn't write this one up there. And then we do, after that, the immediate action plan. And with the immediate action plan, again, this is something you have to do, is you create action items, simple tasks. And actually, I do this. I have just a blank sheet of paper. I think I might actually have, I think you guys have an example of it in your page there. But there's some little things that throughout your time together, you can just quick put on the immediate action plan of like, oh, we're out of check-in labels. Someone needs to order that. Like put it on the page. Like you can take care of those things. But then it's also putting multiple, putting a project on there of saying, okay, we are going to build new check-in stations. And that's what our goal is for the next 120 days. We're going to put an owner to it, and we're going to put a due date on it. And so, again, this is a discipline of saying, we're actually going to act on this. We're not going to have this feel-good 2 to 4 hour meeting with some goals set and then not actually do anything. We're actually going to walk away with owners to the tasks and due dates to the tasks. So I know it's 10 o'clock, so just go till 10?
Yeah, but we have 10, it's like 10:15 is the next one, so.
Okay. Is there any extra sheets?
Don't, but you can use mine.
Can I just?
Absolutely.
So, if you need to leave or take off, for sure can. So yeah, here is kind of where you see an example of the immediate action plan. It's nothing spectacular. It's a simple to-do list. But then another effective thing that I've found that oftentimes can ruffle feathers after something like this is we don't communicate effectively, right? It's like, oh man, we just made this plan and we're gonna move a bunch of people's cheese. And so actually take time, strategically think about all the things you just talked about and think about all the people it's going to impact and put together a communication plan. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna talk to my team members who serve at the check-in station so they know. But I'm also going to communicate to parents. That's something we need to do. Communicate to parents that check-in is going to look a little bit different this week. Because a lot of times we can just do our great action plan and then we forgot, oh, I didn't actually communicate any of this to anybody. And now people are surprised and they're frustrated. And I was excited about my idea and now I'm deflated about my idea. And so communication is so huge, both internal and external. And so take time, take the discipline to communicate with your team. And then when you're doing, like I mentioned earlier, we have built-in times to work on our intentional growth plan throughout the week. Every other Tuesday, whatever team that we put together, that team is going to continue to work on the action items that we listed out. And on here is kind of a meeting agenda or structure that you can make that can help you create a structure for that. So. Any questions?
Bryce?
Yeah.
Different question, different subject, but I noticed your planning goes Monday through Thursday. So is everybody off on Friday? Everybody on the Sunday through Thursday schedule?
I would say 90% of people are, yeah, Monday or Sunday through Thursday.
Sunday through Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, yep. And then we have a couple of, or I would say like our facilities, and then Dan Sipes just likes to work 6 days a week, so our business and admin.
So in your 7 years being here, when did you start implementing this, and then how long did it take for it to actually become a culture?
Yeah.
Understood.
So we have been doing versions of this, I would say, for the last 3 to 4 years. Different, again, language. But this specifically we started a year ago. And I would say it's taken about that long for our whole team to actually feel comfortable with it. But again, I think it depends on the size of your team as well. You know, like if you're all learning it together. Yeah. Does anyone have any, I love talking about this stuff, so if there's things that you will have more questions on or would love to know how to execute something like this or have questions on how this could apply in your church, I would love to just be a resource for you and to help. But if you have any other questions, I do want to dismiss you guys so you can feel like you can get a coffee break or bathroom break if you need it. But any questions?